So I want to do a little update. Recently, I had a major infection in my gallbladder. I had a lot of pain that was constant and didn't let up, and I had to go to the hospital. At first, I didn't want to go to the hospital because of the pandemic, and because I thought it was just my scar acting up. I thought it was my normal chronic pain, so I didn't think anything was seriously wrong. I just had to wait it out. But I couldn't sleep or eat anything, and eventually everyone was like, yeah, you need to go to the hospital, see a doctor or something. So I went to the ER at night, and they did some tests and found that I had gallstones and a very inflamed gallbladder that they would have to take out. However, the surgeon wanted the inflammation to go down before cutting me open, because doing a surgery while something is inflamed could cause problems. So I stayed in the hospital for a few days. They let me go, and the pain acted up again, and I had to go back to the hospital in the same week. Once I was done with the antibiotics, I had the surgery to take my gallbladder out. But of course, when you're me, what's a medical procedure without surprises? Everyone told me the laparoscopic surgery to take my gallbladder out was going to be an easy procedure. I was going to stand up in the same day, and I'll recover real fast type thing. However, the surgeon went in and saw that my gallbladder was completely dead. The gallstones were black and sharp and jaggedy, and my gallbladder was still inflamed, even though I felt fine at that point. And my gallbladder was stuck to my liver and intestines, and a liver cyst was burst. The surgeon planned on lifting part of my liver to cut the gallbladder out, but because it was stuck to the liver, he instead had to lift up my intestines and carefully cut around the liver and intestines. He also took out part of my liver because of the cyst. So the surgery, although laparoscopic, was a lot more invasive than what was planned. Now, I have a disability called Vochter-L syndrome, and a big part of that disability involves my intestines. During the infection, like I said, I couldn't eat because I was in so much pain. I didn't really do anything but lay in bed groaning and screaming. Once I went to the hospital and got antibiotics, I still didn't want to eat, and at first wasn't allowed to eat or drink anything. But when they gave me food, it was broth, and I was afraid that if I didn't eat, that I wasn't allowed to go home. Because this wasn't my first rodeo at the hospital, and that's usually what happens. If you don't or can't eat anything, they generally keep you until you can eat a majority of something. But I did get to eat, but I did kind of get to the point where I could eat food, but it was a lot less than what I was used to eating. And when I got discharged from the infection, I still didn't eat much, and I tried to just stick to the same food so I didn't get sick, which was just a turkey deli sandwich, fruit, and dinners were homemade black bean burritos. That was pretty much all I ate until the actual surgery. These things were for me to be easily digestible and cause the least anguish. After I had the gallbladder surgery, it was like things started over again. I could not eat without pain. The broth was fine, but anything solid, and I was in a lot of pain. And I was so sick of broth that I was barely eating that. I could eat a couple bites of something before I pushed it away. As soon as something went down my throat, I felt pain. And I tried to go as slow as I possibly could when eating. It took me hours to eat a little bit of something because I was trying to take a lot of breaks. Even when I got out of the hospital, it was the same thing. Anything I tried to eat gave me pain, and I would stop after a couple bites. I was very frustrated because I love food and I wanted to eat. I just didn't want to be in pain. After a while, like a couple weeks, the pain started to tone down with food, and I was starting to eat normally, but again at a smaller portion than what I've been used to. And I noticed that if I ate something that was a little bit fatty, then I would feel pain again. This included popcorn, something with even more than a dash of oil, cheese, meats, milk, etc. I could either feel pain immediately, or my body was doing a new thing where it would feel pain 30 minutes after I ate it. If I wanted to eat something fatty, I could only eat a couple bites of it to taste. It was around this time that everyone was telling me how skinny I looked, and I got on the scale and noticed that I lost a lot of weight. And I was losing about a pound a day, which, when it comes to weight, it has its own mind games. The logical part of me was concerned for my health and worried about looking like a string bean, while the other emotional part was subconsciously taking in the compliments and getting terrified of gaining the weight back, so much so that I was purposely making my meals smaller and smaller to the point where I was still only eating a few bites of things again. Eventually, my weight loss stopped, and when it did, I realized it stopped at the weight I was before I got on a certain medication. I used to be on Depo for years to regulate hormones and stop bleeding every 2 weeks. But on this medication, I gained 15 pounds. I tried to lose it while I was on Depo to no avail. I exercised like crazy. I was on a strict vegetarian diet. Nothing was working, and I was told that I wouldn't lose weight until I got off the medication. Eventually, I did get off of Depo and onto testosterone, and doing that, I did lose a few inches all over my body at first, but nothing on the scale. And then the pandemic happened, and I couldn't do the things I was doing, so it made it hard. After this surgery, I lost all the weight that I gained on Depo, and now I'm at my original weight, and it seems to be staying there. I have not gained it back. And I realized I probably won't gain it back, since that weight that I lost was basically probably hormone weight or water weight, and my appetite is a lot smaller than before. So I'm not too worried about weight anymore, but I am still worried about food equaling pain. So what I've been doing is basically trying vegan recipes and cutting out anything fatty unless I can make it healthy. So for example, instead of chocolate or real cookies, I've made vegan cookies with just banana, cacao powder, and a little bit of peanut butter, sometimes a dash of sugar to make it less bitter. I've been experimenting with food and even got an air fryer, which I'm excited about. It's actually been pretty fun to make foods and reimagine them in a sense. I've not had any problems with food since experimenting with veganism and recreating foods to make them healthier. Now, I don't want to put a label on it just yet because all I've been doing is listening to my body and what it needs and what it can handle. I'm not trying to look at it in a perspective of exclusion, but rather inclusion. And I feel like when you put labels on foods or diets or lifestyles, it creates a barrier or communicates exclusivity, and that's not the message that I want to communicate to others or my own brain. And there's a couple reasons why. There is a slippery slope when it comes to foods when you label them. There is the slope of these foods are bad that can turn into all foods are bad, and there's this power struggle between foods that make you happy and foods that make you feel good. When you label foods like that, you're always going to be in the middle of that struggle, either in a middle way where you exclude happy foods cold turkey until you binge them, or in a big way where you exclude all foods and don't eat until you can't take it anymore and binge all the foods in one sitting. When you label foods, you're also labeling your body. If you eat a bad food, then you become a bad person or a bad or ugly body or something to that equivalent. It's a shameful culture that only fuels that power struggle. It's the same idea with teenagers when you try to control what they do and tell them that they were a bad person for going out at night, for example, but you won't hear their side or their needs. You just blame. But what happens with that teen is they're going to feel more anger, more bitterness, and want to do that bad thing more, and will, just in secret intervals. It won't solve the core problem, because you're not listening and you're putting an exclusive perspective instead of an inclusive perspective. Exclusivity makes the exclusivity makes the excluded more enticing, while inclusivity sees everything as an option at once. Once you let go of the need to control and tend to the need of the child, does the problem get solved? It's the same idea with foods and bodies. Bodies are just flesh sacks. They grow and shrink and go through many, many cycles of life. They are never in one state. You can't and shouldn't base our worth or ideals to one shape we used to be in high school or middle school. It's not realistic. It's not realistic to expect a type of stagnation to any state of situation. Everything is constantly changing all of the time. So instead of putting labels or morals or ideals on foods or bodies, I want to put that perspective that I am tending to my body's needs nutritionally and emotionally. And I change what I eat based on how my body feels and what I think it needs. So if something causes me pain, okay, I won't eat it. I'll try to make similar foods. If something gives me energy, I'll eat it to give me energy. If something makes me happy, I'll eat it when I need to feel happy. If something happy causes me pain, I'll find another way to make it. I'm not going to tell myself I won't ever eat X, Y, and Z, because that just puts exclusivity and makes those foods more enticing. So instead I can say that I'm including A, B, and C into my life because they taste similar and make me feel good, and I'm on an adventure. Since this journey though, I have felt really good. I don't have to worry about being anemic anymore because my red blood cell count has risen due to hormones, so I doubt I'm going to have problems I used to have when I was vegetarian. I feel pretty happy and kind of nostalgic in a way, and I don't know if that's the weather or certain scents in the air around me. I'm also noticing more things around me, and I have bursts of energy a lot. I'm always desperate to be in the sun. So that's the update.